His sister found him unconscious on the floor of a motel room, and the paramedics later told her that if she had arrived just a few minutes later, they wouldn't have been able to save him. But this isn't a story about how close he came to dying. This is a story about the moment Jesus reached down into the worst night of his life, and refused to let him go. His name was Caleb Foster. 29 years old, from a small town in Oklahoma, raised by parents who took him to church every Sunday of his childhood. He used to sit in the front pew, singing louder than anybody else in the children's choir, the kind of kid everyone assumed would grow up just fine. Nobody expected the road Caleb's life would eventually take. It started small, the way these things usually do. Pain pills after a football injury in high school. A little relief that turned into a little more. By the time he graduated college, Caleb had a habit he was hiding from everyone who loved him, smiling through family dinners while quietly falling apart underneath. His mother, Linda, used to say she could see it in his eyes long before he ever admitted anything was wrong. That same warmth that used to be there, slowly dimming year after year, replaced by something exhausted and distant. She prayed for him every single night. Every night for almost a decade, she got on her knees beside her bed and said the same simple prayer. Lord, bring my son home. Whatever it takes, please bring him home to you. Caleb lost his job first. Then his apartment. Then most of the relationships that used to matter to him, one by one, the way addiction quietly takes everything without ever announcing what it's doing until it's already gone. His sister, Hannah, was the only one who never fully gave up on him, the only one who kept answering his calls even in the years when those calls came at 3 in the morning, slurred and confused, sometimes angry, sometimes crying, sometimes just silent on the other end of the line. I don't know how to help him anymore, Hannah admitted to her mother one night. I just keep praying God gets to him before it's too late. She had no idea how literally that prayer was about to be answered. By the time Caleb was 29, he had cycled through 2 treatment programs, both times leaving early, both times convinced he could handle things on his own. He was living out of a car for a while, then crashing in cheap motels when he had enough money, drifting further and further from the life his family remembered, further from the boy who used to sing loud in that front pew. The night everything changed started like 100 nights before it. Caleb was alone in a motel room outside Tulsa, the kind of room with flickering lights and thin walls, the kind of place nobody plans on ending up in when they're young and full of dreams. He was exhausted in a way that went far beyond his body. Exhausted from years of running from something he couldn't outrun. Exhausted from disappointing the people who loved him. Exhausted from a life that had become smaller and darker with every passing year. He would later describe that night as the lowest point he had ever reached, a place where the weight of everything, the shame, the isolation, the years of hurting people he loved, had become almost unbearable to carry. Sometime that evening, in the middle of that darkness, Caleb made choices that put his life in serious danger. He doesn't remember all the details of what happened next. What he does remember, clearly, vividly, in a way he says he'll never forget, was a moment where everything around him seemed to go quiet, and in that quiet, he heard himself say something he hadn't said in years. God, if you're still there. I don't want to live like this anymore. Please help me. It wasn't a polished prayer. It wasn't even a hopeful one, really. It was the last honest thing left in him, spoken out loud into an empty motel room by a man who had run out of anywhere else to turn. He doesn't remember much after that. What happened next, Caleb only knows because his sister told him later, piecing it together through tears months afterward. Hannah said that earlier that same evening, hundreds of miles away, she had been getting ready for bed when a feeling came over her, sudden and urgent, that she needed to check on her brother right then, that something was wrong. She called him. He didn't answer. She called again. Nothing. I don't know how to explain it, Hannah said later. It wasn't like a normal worry. It was like something was pulling at me, telling me I couldn't wait until morning. Against her husband's gentle suggestion that she was probably just anxious and should try again in the morning, Hannah got in her car at 11 at night and drove 2 hours to the motel where she knew Caleb sometimes stayed, praying the entire drive, tears streaming down her face, repeating the same words over and over. God, please. Please let me get there in time. Please don't let it be too late. She arrived at the motel a little after 1 in the morning, banged on the door, and when no one answered, convinced the front desk clerk to let her in, something she says she'll never fully be able to explain how she managed to do. She found Caleb on the floor, unconscious, and immediately called 911, holding his hand, praying out loud over her brother's body while she waited for help to arrive, the same kind of desperate, raw prayer their mother had been praying for years. Please, God, not like this. Not tonight. Bring him back. Please bring my brother back. The paramedics arrived within minutes. Caleb was rushed to the hospital, and doctors later told the family that his condition when he arrived was critical enough that the outcome could have gone very differently. One doctor, reviewing the timeline with Hannah days later, quietly told her that the timing of her arrival, uncannily, impossibly precise, likely made the difference between life and death. Caleb woke up in a hospital bed 2 days later, disoriented, weak, and the first face he saw when his eyes finally focused was his sister's, red-eyed and exhausted, holding his hand the way she had held it in that motel room. Hannah, he whispered. How did you know? How did you know to come? Hannah just shook her head, tears falling again. I don't know how to explain it, Caleb. I just knew. Something told me I had to go. I think it was God. I really do. Caleb lay there for a long moment, processing what she was telling him, remembering, slowly, the prayer he had whispered in that motel room right before everything went dark. The last honest words he had spoken in years. And he realized, lying in that hospital bed, that the same night he had finally, desperately called out to God, God had already been moving, already been placing an urgency in his sister's heart 2 hours away, already answering a prayer before Caleb had even finished praying it. He broke down crying in that hospital bed in a way he hadn't allowed himself to cry in years. I asked him to help me, Caleb said through tears. I didn't think he was even listening anymore. I didn't think there was anything left to save. Caleb entered treatment again after he was released from the hospital, but this time, something was different. This time, he says, he wasn't trying to get better on his own strength. He spent those months in recovery reading scripture for the first time in years, praying not out of desperation but out of gratitude, slowly rebuilding a relationship with God that addiction had buried but never fully destroyed. His mother, Linda, still cries when she tells the story of the day Caleb finally came home for good, walking through the front door of the house he grew up in, sober, steady, and asking if they could pray together before dinner the way they used to when he was a boy. I prayed for that moment for almost 10 years, Linda says. I never stopped believing God would bring him home. I just didn't know it would take him almost dying in a motel room for it to finally happen. Caleb has been sober for 3 years now. He speaks at his home church occasionally, and at a few recovery ministries around Oklahoma, always careful to tell his story honestly, without pretending the road since then has been easy, because it hasn't been. But he always ends the same way. I was one prayer away from giving up completely that night. And God met me in that prayer before I even finished saying it. My sister felt something pull her out of her bed at 11 o'clock at night, 2 hours away, and I believe with everything in me that was God, moving before I even knew how badly I needed him to. If you're in a dark room tonight, whatever that room looks like for you, whatever weight feels too heavy to carry another day, please hear this clearly. You are not too far gone. You are not too broken, too ashamed, or too lost for God to reach you. Caleb thought he had run out of chances. He hadn't. Someone, somewhere, was praying for him long before he ever prayed for himself, and God was already moving before Caleb even called out. If you're struggling right now, please don't carry it alone. Reach out to someone you trust, a pastor, a family member, a friend, or a crisis line if you need someone tonight. You are worth fighting for, and your story isn't finished yet. Sometimes the miracle isn't the moment you find God. Sometimes the miracle is realizing He never stopped looking for you. Whatever room you're sitting in tonight, He already knows the way in.